There is a reason McDonald's is studied in every serious business school on earth. Not because of the food, because of the architecture, the psychological architecture underneath the brand that turned a San Bernardino hamburger stand into a $200 billion empire. And every principle inside that architecture is replicable, not in fast food, in any business that wants to stop competing for attention and start competing for automatic behavior. Principle 1. Sell certainty before you sell product. In 1948, Richard and Maurice McDonald made a decision that most business owners never make. They decided to compete on predictability instead of variety. They cut the menu from over 20 items to 9. They standardized every element of the experience. They made the outcome of every visit identical to the last. At the time, conventional wisdom said variety was the competitive advantage. More options meant more customers served. More customers served meant more revenue. The McDonald brothers understood something deeper. Psychologist Barry Schwartz would later formalize it as the paradox of choice. More options don't increase satisfaction, they increase anxiety. And anxious customers hesitate. Hesitating customers often leave. The McDonald's insight was this: certainty is a product, and people will pay for it repeatedly. Not because the product is superior, because the uncertainty is gone. The business lesson here is precise. Before you compete on quality, compete on predictability. Before you optimize for the best outcome, optimize for the most reliable outcome. Because reliability creates habits, and habits create revenue that doesn't require acquisition. Principle 2. Convert decisions into habits. The human brain runs on efficiency. It consumes 20% of total body energy despite representing 2% of body weight. The most expensive organ you carry, and because energy is finite, the brain automates every behavior it possibly can. Psychologists call this chunking. A sequence of individual decisions collapsed into a single stored routine. The basal ganglia handles these stored routines. They require almost no conscious energy. They fire in response to context cues, and they are extraordinarily resistant to change. McDonald's entire expansion strategy, whether Kroc understood it in neuroscientific terms or not, was a habit installation campaign. Every new location was a new context cue. Every consistent experience reinforced the stored routine. Every identical interaction deepened the groove until the behavior wasn't a decision anymore. It was an automatic response to environmental triggers. The practical implication for any business is this: your goal is not to win repeated conscious evaluations. Your goal is to exit the evaluation entirely, to become the default, the automatic response, the thing that happens before the comparison begins. Because once you're in the habit loop, you're no longer competing. If you're fascinated by the hidden psychological systems that create wealth, influence, and billion-dollar brands, subscribe and turn on notifications for daily wealth psychology. Because the deeper the psychology, the bigger the business usually becomes. Principle 3. Build symbols that think for your customer. The golden arches are not a logo. They are a cognitive shortcut installed into 2 billion human minds. The distinction matters because logos and cognitive shortcuts function differently. A logo is processed consciously, evaluated, recognized, associated with a brand. A cognitive shortcut bypasses conscious processing entirely. The neuroscientist Antonio Damasio's somatic marker hypothesis explains the mechanism. Humans retrieve emotional signals before engaging rational evaluation. The feeling precedes the reasoning. When a person who grew up with McDonald's sees the golden arches while tired, hungry, or far from home, the emotional retrieval fires before the conscious mind engages. Comfort, familiarity, predictability, safety. The decision is made in the limbic system. The conscious mind experiences it as a preference. McDonald's built that retrieval pattern through decades of consistent sensory repetition. Same colors, same architecture, same lighting, same smell profile, same acoustic environment. Every sensory channel reinforcing the same stored association. The business principle extracted from this is among the most valuable in psychology. Consistency is not a design constraint. Consistency is compounding investment. Every identical experience deposits another layer into the customer's emotional memory. and emotional memory, unlike product features, cannot be copied by a competitor. Principle 4. Install belonging before you need loyalty. The Happy Meal launched in 1979. It is the most psychologically sophisticated product McDonald's ever created, and most people dismiss it as a children's toy promotion. That misses the entire mechanism. The Happy Meal was a belonging ritual. For millions of children, it was one of their first experiences of having something in the adult commercial world designed specifically for them. Their own box, their own portion, their own toy. A sense of occasion built around them. McDonald's wasn't creating a customer transaction. It was creating an emotional anchor, and emotional anchors formed in childhood become the baseline against which all future experiences are measured. The adult who feels an inexplicable pull toward McDonald's at midnight is not responding to rational preference. They're responding to emotional architecture installed 30 years earlier. One Happy Meal at a time. The business lesson here is the most important one. Loyalty programs don't create loyalty. Emotional memory creates loyalty, and emotional memory is formed through experiences that make the customer feel seen, included, and welcomed, not through points, not through discounts, through belonging. The brands that engineer belonging early in the customer lifecycle create a moat that no competitor can cross, because you cannot offer a discount large enough to displace 30 years of emotional residue. And if you want more breakdowns of the psychological mechanisms behind the world's most dominant companies, subscribe and turn on notifications for daily wealth psychology, because every empire leaves clues. Principle 5. Redefine the standard before your competitor arrives. McDonald's greatest strategic achievement had nothing to do with food, it had to do with expectations. Before McDonald's industrialized speed, waiting was the baseline assumption of the dining experience. Customers sat, waited, and accepted it, because there was no reference point that suggested faster was possible. McDonald's created that reference point, and once it existed, it could never be removed. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill, the human tendency to normalize improvements rapidly and then suffer when they disappear. What felt extraordinary in 1948 became expected by 1958. What felt expected by 1958 became the minimum standard by 1968. McDonald's didn't just build a faster restaurant. They moved the floor, and every competitor who entered the market afterward had to clear a bar McDonald's had already set. This is the most underappreciated principle in business strategy. The company that defines what's normal doesn't just win the current competition. It designs the playing field for every competition that follows. Standards are more defensible than products. Expectations are more powerful than features. Because a competitor can build a better burger, they cannot undo the expectation that food should arrive in under 60 seconds. That expectation now lives inside the customer. Here is the complete architecture. McDonald's built an empire not by making the best food, but by engineering 5 psychological systems simultaneously. Certainty as a product, habits instead of decisions, symbols that bypass conscious evaluation, belonging installed before loyalty was needed, and standards that redefined the competitive landscape permanently. Every dominant brand you can name used a version of this same architecture. Apple removed the complexity from technology the way McDonald's removed the friction from food. Nike installed belonging through tribal identity the way McDonald's installed it through childhood ritual. Coca-Cola built symbol architecture so deep it survived a product disaster that should have ended the company. Starbucks sold certainty and belonging in a paper cup and called it coffee. The product changed. The architecture didn't. Because the architecture isn't about what you sell. It's about what you install inside the customer. And what you install inside the customer compounds forever. Subscribe and turn on notifications for daily wealth psychology. Because the next empire used a different entry point, but the same 5 principles. And understanding it will change how you see every brand that has ever made you feel something you couldn't explain.